Hello, everyone. I'm pleased to be here, and I'll try to, get to the point quite quickly. So what we've built is the world's first software for detection of deep vein thrombosis, which is a blood clot in the leg. A little bit of context, it's the #1 cause of preventable hospital death in the world. So the blood clot leads to something called a pulmonary embolism, which can lead to death. More people die from this than AIDS, breast cancer, and car accidents combined. So it's a huge problem, and the crux of the issue is the diagnosis of these patients, which is why we built our software. The technology is quite simple in a sense. Of course, it took us almost 7 years to build it, but it's quite simple in principle, which is it's an app. You download it onto your phone, and with one of the already commercially available handheld ultrasound devices, a non-specialist, such as a nurse or a doctor, can perform a compression ultrasound to detect deep vein thrombosis. We hope to the same accuracy as a radiologist. The data can be sent for radiology confirmation remotely, which simplifies the clinical pathway, which I'll go into in a second. So here you see another image of a doctor performing a compression ultrasound scan, guided by our software to perform a diagnosis. And there's also the remote radiology review. We've done quite a lot of work already. In fact, we've scanned more than 600 patients across the UK, Germany, and Greece. You can see some of the logos there of the NHS trusts we're working on. So we've done multi-centered, double-blinded clinical trials. In fact, as far as we know, they are the first in the world in terms of comparing an AI-guided ultrasound for DVT detection to standard of care. Some of the papers we've already published, including in Nature, shows very strong sensitivity, specificity, and health economics. Again, demonstrating the use of our technology in clinical practice would be extremely cost-effective and helpful. Finally, we've already partnered with, obviously, multiple hospitals. We also have ultrasound vendors that we've partnered with. You can see Clarius, one of the prominent handheld ultrasound vendors in the world. This is part of our commercial model as well. We're ISO 13485, and we're getting ready for FDA and Class 2B CE mark clearance right now. In fact, we're starting our FDA pivotal clinical studies hopefully this year. I want to show you practically how the technology works. If I'm very lucky, this video will start. I didn't test this, so let's find out. Okay, it does. So here you can see the arteries in red, veins in green, and in real time, for the first time, you're able to scan a suspected DVT patient, be guided by the software, and perform what's called compression. So you physically push on the vein to look for a thrombus. That's the gold standard diagnosis of DVT with ultrasound. You can see the software automatically analyzes the compression, gives feedback to the user agrees, and then the process moves on. Here is an example of an actual clot. You see the vein in green doesn't compress, and here the data goes up to the cloud for review and confirmation. So it's very, very quick. You can do it in about 5 to 15 minutes, and clearly that's going to transform patient care. The reason this matters a lot, not just obviously saving the life of the patient, which we should take for granted, also because the current clinical pathway is broken. It takes a long time to get diagnosed. Patient goes from suspicion to referred to the emergency department. They get risk assessed. They have to do a blood test. Then they have to wait a few hours. If you're in the NHS, you have to wait many, many hours indeed. And then you get an ultrasound scan, which is essentially the scan that I just showed you guys, and then you get a diagnosis at the end. So we thought, well, if the non-expert, the nurse, for example, or even the GP can do the scan, well, that transforms the entire clinical pathway. You can skip a bunch of these steps. And so therefore, that's exactly what we built, and that's what we publish our health economics on. So the scan can take 5 to 15 minutes instead, done by any nurse or doctor, can reduce radiology admissions by up to 90%. The reason is 90% of patients are negative anyway. The blood test may not be required, and it's low cost. So really, we're nailing it home at this point that this is a better way of managing DVT patients. We've raised a little bit more than I just said here, because I didn't update this slide, but it's about $5.6 million to date, but that's okay. And then obviously we've already published peer-reviewed papers, etc. And the next step of the company is to raise another funding round, which I'm happy to talk to those of you that are interested after this talk. And then we will be starting our FDA pivotal studies hopefully this year to get clearance, and we should also be getting our CE Class 2 clearance either at the end of this year or early next year. This is quite a big market. In fact, it's an entirely new category of ultrasound software. So we estimate that to be about $12.5 billion a year. It can even go higher than that. That's actually a fairly conservative estimate. We believe that the ultrasound AI market is larger than the entire hardware market itself. And when you think a little bit more about it, it's accessing a different pool of money. That's why it's larger. You're accessing diagnostics instead of just purchasing equipment, which is why it's so much larger. That tends to be the case in software anyway. So a little bit about the leadership. So I'm an electronic engineer by background. My co-founder is a hardware engineer. We have machine learning professors like Bernard Kynes at Imperial College London. Professor Nicola Curry, a consultant hematologist, is running and supporting our studies in the UK. Professor Evigrano is a vascular surgeon at UPMC, and he's supporting us with the US clinical studies, as well as our CMO, Professor Mike Blivis, who is one of the world's prominent point-of-care ultrasound experts. And that's pretty much it. I have 2 minutes, so I'm happy to take questions, but I'm also happy to leave the stage if there's no questions. But go ahead. No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much.